Hey, New York City Metro chapter of the W3C. Congratulations! I'm Telford-Reed, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the work that we are doing about web payments, payments on the open web, and how you guys can get involved. So, I'm co-chair of the Web Payments Working Group at the W3C. I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing and also about a new group that we're starting explicitly for merchants. So people who sell things online, people who take payments online. So whether you're actively involved in thinking about payments and payment technology, or you're a business that takes payments online, I think there's something that will be interesting for you to hear about. So online payments are super hard. I mean, everybody knows that, right? You've got to balance friction, user experience, dropout, and consistency. And we want web payments to be as easy as possible, because we don't want users to drop out. If you're taking payments online and you've worked super hard to get people through your sales funnel, you don't want them to drop out because the payment is difficult, or the way that they want to pay isn't available. But we also need to make sure that there's consent. We need to make sure that the user is allowed to make that payment, and we need to keep all of that information secure. And then the whole thing needs to be familiar and comfortable, just like when you walk into a store and buy something. So, that is a big challenge. It's only harder when you then moving across geographies, when you're dealing with an international community or a global community, as we are with the web, because payments are socially and culturally mediated. Your experiences living in New York are very different from the experiences I have here on the other side of the pond, and they'd be different again if we were out in Southeast Asia or in Africa. So this is the challenge that we're facing. How do we provide consistency of service? How do we satisfy all of these challenges? And it's difficult. So the good news is that actually web payments is something that we can work on together at the W3C. So we have a working group with participation from all around the globe. We have people from the merchant side, from the seller side, we have people from user and buyer side, and we have other stakeholders. So we've got some really big names in here, as you'd expect. We've got the browser vendors like Apple and Google and Mozilla and Samsung, but we also have, Facebook involved. We have Airbnb and Amazon and Netflix. We have Shopify. We have FIS WorldPay. We have Stripe. You can read the slide. We have great participation. And what we're trying to do is build a web standard that's going to give us a specification that will allow us to make payments that have very common, similar user experiences across browsers. It'll work whichever payment method you choose, so not just cards, but direct credit transfers or paying directly from your bank account. Secure remote commerce, which is a new scheme from Visa and MasterCard and the other major card schemes. Cryptocurrencies, buy now, pay later. All of these experiences need to be supported, but we need strong authentication so that it's genuinely the payer making the payment, and we need an open ecosystem, and the user experiences need to be amazing so that we can compete with the XPays of this world. So that's our goal. It's tough. So we're already somewhere along the line of this work. We have 3 specifications that I just want to mention today. We have something called Payment Request API, which lets web stores, web shops create a payment. We have something called Payment Handler, which is an extension point that lets people build payment applications and rich payment experiences that sit in the browser. And then we have a more mature piece of work called Web Authentication, which is really, I think, going to shift the dial on how users prove they are who they say they are on the open web. So let's have a quick demo so you know what I'm talking about. This is a little demo that Google have knocked up. You can see this is on mobile. We're going to use something called Bob Pay just to demonstrate that we can use other payment methods. We're going to pick a payment method. We're going to pick pay with this Bob Pay balance, and go. So that is a very similar experience to kind of an XPay, to an Apple Pay or a Pay with Google or whatever. But that was actually done with a web application, a payment handler here called Bob Pay. You can also, that was mobile, but the whole point about browsers is that we want these common experiences to work on desktop as well. So here's an example of what's called a payment sheet, but built here instead for desktop, and you can see we've got Visa as the payments method selected here. And we think we can go even further by bringing in authentication experiences. And so this next slide is a little demonstration that Coil, who are a participant in the working group, have built. And so here we're touching the sensor, we're using the native capability in this case of the mobile device, but we're using web authentication. Well, that's certainly the goal. This is a demo. So that's where we're trying to get to. Why now? Well, regulators are getting more and more closely involved with payments. Here in Europe, we've got something called Payment Systems Directive 2, which is introducing strong customer authentication for almost all higher value payments that are made on the web. We've got changing customer behaviors. We all know we're living through this pandemic. Everything's shifting online. People want to be able to switch between devices, and they want to be able to use the right kind of payment for the right kind of transaction in the right circumstance. And there's also a shift coming in kind of browser behavior. Browsers looking ever more closely at privacy, and so we're seeing potentially changes to kind of cross-origin sharing and storage. We're seeing changes, privacy becoming more and more of a priority. So definitely efforts to reduce fingerprinting. And I think the biggest single shift is that web authentication as a set of technologies on the open web is now available with all the major platforms. So the Apple ecosystem, the Windows ecosystem, and the Android ecosystem. And how do you guys get involved? Well, so the first thing to say is W3C does everything in the open, which is an amazing place to be. I've put up a link here for our GitHub repo for web payments. If you want to be involved in creating that specification, that working group is where to come. If you're just interested in talking about the use cases, the problems that you're facing accepting payments online, or you want to talk about how accessibility or internationalization affects that, we're founding a new merchant business group. We're hoping to start meeting for the first time in September. But more than anything else, if you take only one thing away from my presentation today, it's we want experimentation and implementation. We do all of this in public, and we put all these APIs, specifications available, not when they're completely finished, but while they're still works of progress, because the more you guys can get involved, the more you can build things, experiment, give us feedback, the better chance we've got of meeting that lofty goal of building, the best possible experiences, but that work on the open web. So thank you so much for your time. That's been a very rapid tour through the work that we're doing in web payments. I'm Nick Telford-Reed. You can find me on my email address, nicktr@w3.org. And I hope to speak to many of you very soon. Thanks very much.